That's it done.
Okay, members, you're very welcome to this afternoon's Executive Office Committee. We have a couple of items on the agenda today, a presentation from the officials on the Executive COVID Recovery Plan, and then we also have a couple of written submissions that we will be giving some consideration to as well. At this stage, we don't, I think, have any apologies received. Michael, has there been any apologies since we last spoke?
No, Chair.
Okay. Under item 2 then for Chairman's business, and just to inform members that on Monday I met with Jane Brady, who is the new head of the Civil Service. We had just a sort of meet and greet, and she discussed what her sort of priorities are as she's been settling in for the last few weeks. I extended the invite that we've already extended to her in writing, an invite to come meet with ourselves as soon as we can, so that we can have a conversation with her about the role that she and the work that she will be doing. And what moves in maybe to the second part of what I wanted to mention on the Chairman's remarks was maybe if just to let members know that we've also asked, and I think that we should write to the department and ask them for officially how they're divvying up their duties between the new permanent secretary and head of civil service. As members will be aware, previously those two roles were in the one person. They are now segregated, but they're both located within the executive office that we scrutinise. I understand from the chair of the Finance Committee that even today there was some announcement potentially regarding an investigation or review into civil service sort of staffing and complement, and that's going to be carried out by the permanent secretary in TEO, where that would have something I would have thought would have been the head of civil services responsibility. So if we're going to have this confusion as to who's actually going to carry out what tasks, I think it would be better if we got that in writing so that we know if we want to ask questions and we know who we're going to ask those. So would members be agreeable if we write and ask for a breakdown of what areas will be split between the permanent secretary and the head of civil service?
Yep.
Okay, that's grand. Members, we'll move on then to item 3, which is the draft minutes from our meeting on the 15th of September. They're there at page 6 of the meeting pack. Are members content with the minutes?
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, so we'll have them agreed and we'll get them signed and submitted then. Item 4 is matters arising. Just one of note there obviously is that we had Claire Bailey along last week to discuss our private members bill on climate change. The report and summary from that meeting, that conversation is contained under matters arising. If members are content with that, we can forward that to the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs, who are carrying out the committee scrutiny of that private members bill. Are members content with that document?
Great.
Content.
Okay, so we can have that submitted then. Also, just on page 19, there's correspondence from Claire Bailey informing committee that a figure had been misquoted during a royal briefing last week and advising a correct information. So that happens to all of us at different times. So we thank her for clarifying that for us. If we could go then to item 5, which is the COVID Recovery Plan Departmental Officials input. And if we could bring the officials up into the spotlight. And joining us at our meeting today, we have Karen Pearson, who is the Director of COVID Strategy and Civil Contingencies within the Executive Office. We also have Peter Looney, who is the Deputy Director of COVID Strategy and Recovery. We also have Jane Holmes, who is the head of the COVID recovery team. So everybody from that key team then. Just looking at the screen, I think but that's it. We have the 3 of yourselves. Karen, thank you very much. Karen, have you been with us before?
Yes, I have, Chair. Yeah.
I think maybe were you just on the phone element of it? I feel like it's the first time I've actually seen you face to face, but maybe you were on video the last time that you were with us. But you're very welcome anyway to today's meeting. We know that you've been undertaking a massive amount of work, probably very much in the background to most people during the pandemic, but you've been heading up that unit that has been right at the front and dealing with issues on a day-to-day basis and right across department, and I know that there has been a substantial amount of work, and I know that any time that I've engaged with yourself, be it at 8 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock in the morning, that you have always come back to me, and that's always appreciated. So I know that we're moving into a slightly different phase when it comes to the COVID, more from rather than a response to a recovery mode. And I know that you're going to give us that sort of update today, and then we'll allow members to ask some questions. So if you're happy, I'll pass over to yourself for that.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. Chair, what we were going to do today, and thank you very much for inviting us to brief you on the COVID recovery plan, is give you very much a helicopter view, because we know you want us to come back on detail, and quite a lot of this is owned by other departments, and we may have to get specific answers for you in writing as well. But if it's okay with you, Chair, I'll just start with that helicopter view. So thank you again for inviting us in. You've introduced my colleagues Peter and Jane, and we'd like to outline our approach against 4 main headings, if that's okay. So first and foremost, this is about citizens and the importance of the recovery plan making a difference for people. Secondly, collaboration and the importance of the plan being more than the sum of its parts. Then the content, why the plan contains what it does, how we got here, and the impact ministers want us to have, and then our commitment going forward. So the context for citizens. COVID-19 has had a devastating impact on citizens' health, economic and societal well-being, and the emergency response to the pandemic taught us much about collaborative working, not just across central government, but with other sectors too. And it's demonstrated that the success that we can achieve when we get it right and work together. So to deliver recovery most effectively for citizens, collaboration of the type we saw during the emergency phase will be vital. Now, we've still got some restrictions in place, and I've just checked my briefing pack. We've got a small number, but an important number of restrictions in place, but the executive between the 1st of April and the 10th of September has reached 17 significant packages of easements. They're working their way through very carefully and cautiously, but we are acutely aware that we've still got some that impact citizens and businesses, but we can't wait to the end of that process to start recovery. We think the time is right now. So it's vital that we now plan and progress recovery to address the known negative impacts of the pandemic. And recovery is not about getting us back to where we were before. We think it provides a foundation for economic health and societal renewal, and it will lead us into programme for government. So a brief word on the importance of collaboration, Chair, if I may. We will have to remain agile and responsive, so we don't expect the plan to remain exactly as it is over the course of the next 2 years. Things will emerge, and it's really important that we're proactive on that front. We go looking for the COVID impacts, and we have written out to a number of key stakeholders across Northern Ireland this week, seeking specific meetings with some of our key partners. So we will proactively work with external stakeholders, and we will continue to scan for the impacts. It's also important as we recover, we don't just go back to how we worked in March 2020, fine though that was, that we've got to strive to retain the new working practices and be flexible and agile and use this experience to help shape the future. So the impacts of the pandemic have driven innovation and flexibility to address the unprecedented challenges we've encountered. They've also given us all, I think, a different perspective on the way we live our lives. We're seeing more walking, more cycling, more use of the outdoor world, which is something we will encourage. And it's important that we harness what we've gained from this experience as we work through by working with those who have skills, knowledge and expertise to bring about positive change. So that's our departments, but it's the outside world as well. So on the content, Chair, the Executive's Building Forward Recovery Plan was published on the 2nd of August, and it aims to accelerate recovery over the next 24 months, ensure our citizens are better off in the shorter term, and address critical challenges citizens are facing now and in the near term, and that should move us hopefully seamlessly into programme for government. So we have been working with departments to develop the integrated plan to drive societal, economic and health recovery, and to inform the Executive of the priorities for acceleration. And whilst most of the actions are focused on the immediate future, they will, as I say, take us into programme for government territory, hopefully soon. So in developing the plan, the emphasis was on cross-departmental priorities, and we have settled on four key areas, and these are sustainable economic development, green growth and sustainability, tackling inequalities, and health of the population. I'm just going to give you a few stats here, Chair. So in relation to sustainable economic development, we know that the number of people in employment fell by around 35,000 between March 2020 and March 2021. And 26,000 of these citizens were aged 16 to 24. So we know that's a vulnerable group. We also know that approximately 50% of apprentices were furloughed over the year, which could result in a total of 3.4 million impact on outturn here unless those citizens can find jobs. And that's in addition to the individual impact on their own livelihoods. So under this accelerator, we will be focusing on job creation and growth and enhancing skills by progressing priority activities such as tourism, enhancing needs-based skills and transitioning to a low-carbon future. So linked with that, the Green Growth and Sustainability Accelerator, that's there. There's virtually international recognition of the importance of green growth in this space and the opportunities that we can't afford to not take up. So, for example, 17% of funding for OECD countries who are working on recovery has been set aside for environmentally positive measures. So for us, priority plans such as developing and implementing a green growth action plan, climate action plan, delivering city and growth deal programmes and providing access to good, affordable, sustainable homes are examples of how we can emerge stronger. So in short, Chair, we know that some inequalities have deepened as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. For example, those from disadvantaged backgrounds have been hit hardest, and women have been disproportionately impacted with regards to remaining in employment. And I'm sure all committee members will also be very concerned about children and young people. So tackling inequalities, we will be focusing on 6 key areas: addressing vulnerabilities, enabling a learning recovery, enhancing skills, ensuring equitable job creation, providing equitable access to health services and reducing poverty. We also know the pandemic will have longer-term impacts on population health as people are waiting for treatment, and the effects on mental health could prove to be intergenerational. So, for example, as of 31st of March 2021, 83.3% of patients were waiting for longer than 13 weeks to be admitted to hospital for inpatient or day care treatment. And over the last 5 years, 9 of the inequality indicators have widened between the most and least deprived areas here. These include preventable deaths, drug misuse and infant mortality. So the Health of the Population Accelerator will need to address vulnerability, protect and improve the health of the population, promote health and wellbeing, reduce poverty and invest in green initiatives that benefit population health. So priority interventions are to address waiting lists, maintain a continued focus on the ongoing COVID-19 response, and tackling poverty and inequalities will contribute to progressing this recovery sector and indeed others. So in each area of strategic intent, we have priority activities and action plans. And overall, we have selected 83 highly impactful interventions across departments, which represent the executive's priorities in coming months. Work is underway to identify very specific interventions that will have tangible impacts in the next 6 months before the end of the mandate. And we want those to be cross-cutting, we want them to require collaboration, and we want them to be funded. And most are, and we can come on to that. So the plan presents significant opportunities to achieve impact which is greater than the sum of its parts, and that's why we are coordinating this at the centre. And that is both in terms of what can be progressed and what can be delivered through cross-departmental action. So moving forward, it's important we continue to work across government to ensure consistency of messaging and to provide a clear roadmap. And it's also important we take account of the course of the pandemic, particularly over the coming autumn and winter months, because we're still in the midst of a very serious situation. And we also need to be mindful of the other winter pressures that we might get, such as a flu season, and we must continue to protect our health service. So in summarising, Chair, the recovery plan as it's published now, we feel, represents the most appropriate response and interventions at this time. But our commitment is we will keep it under review as we move through the coming months. We will also proactively work with stakeholders to ensure we take account of emerging issues. We are developing oversight and reporting arrangements to the executive, and it would be our aim as officials to bring a paper to the executive with the first progress report before the end of the calendar year. And of course, we'll continue to keep the committee up to date on key developments. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Karen. Appreciate that. We'll move just straight into questions and try and get ourselves started on those, and I'll begin. Maybe if I could ask, just first of all, there's references within the media to a COVID task force. This is a COVID recovery team. It's a COVID recovery report. Can you give us just what the lay of the land is in terms of those various terms, and are they all one and the same?
It's very often the same people, but with very specific roles and functions, Chair. So obviously the ultimate decision-making body is the executive. We take our lead there as always. To inform executive decisions, we have an executive COVID task force. It's chaired by the head of the civil service with relevant permanent secretaries on that group to just keep us focused on the big strategic issues around protecting the health of the population, protecting our health service. Recovery sits there as well, lifting of restrictions, citizens' adherence and behaviours and strategic communications. Below that, in my group of colleagues, Peter is my deputy, Jane leads on recovery, and then our other colleague, Carol Morrow, has been leading on the lifting of restrictions. So there's not too many layers there, I hope. And it does make sure that what we do in my group has a direct line through strategy and up to executive decision making.
So are you the COVID recovery team, and then you report to the COVID task force, who reports to the executive? Is that?
Yes, we describe ourselves as the COVID strategy team, within which we're looking both at the lifting of restrictions and the preparation of the recovery plan. We could put that on a page, Chair, and get that over to the committee just with the titles and the terms.
Perfect. Yeah, that'd be good. Very useful. Thank you. Then maybe can I ask about? I want to talk maybe in terms of vaccination, which I know we could say is a health-related matter, but I think we're actually looking more at a messaging. We're looking more at how we get the information to people to make them sure that and certain that the vaccine is safe, that it is something that they should be responding to, because we are in, I think, a paradox whereby we have the most restrictions that there are probably on these islands are still here, yet we have the highest number of cases on these islands is here. And looking at that, it should be the other way about. Because we are maintaining the restrictions, we should be seeing our daily caseload going down, but it isn't. And I know that many people within the community are, we're not too far off the mark from what's going on here. Why are we not able to control the number of cases on a day and daily basis when that can be in other places? And how does vaccination and the messaging of that, is that something that's just left to health, or is that something that your team would take on board as well?
It is a health league, Chair, because that's an intervention at a health level. But I think the executive has recognised from the outset the importance of the vaccination programme and has done everything that they can to support the Minister of Health in the delivery of that. And if I could just say, personally and professionally, I think what they've done on the vaccination programme is just remarkable. The reach and the dedication to get every single person through the door that they can get, because it really matters. Every percentage increase in the population vaccinated does translate into less hospital patients, and that's what this is all about. So vaccines is very much there, but yes, it's delivered by health, but we wouldn't see it as Minister Swan's problem. It's an executive priority to get everyone through the door, and that is supported. My colleagues within the department who lead on communications are currently developing the autumn-winter communications plan, and there will be ongoing key messages about the importance of vaccinations, I'm sure, right through, probably right through till next spring.
If I could come in just briefly, Chair, just wanted to highlight, you touched upon sort of misinformation around vaccines, and that is an area of focus as well. And I know that we're now using social media channels to try and get out and combat that misinformation. I understand a new campaign is launching on TikTok and Snapchat to try and tackle that as well. As Karen said, it's important to drive up those figures even by small percentages just to get us over to the critical mass.
And I mean, can I echo as well, Karen, what you're saying there about the fabulous work that has taken place. And I don't want this to take away from it, but it's regrettable in public service and in politics that you're almost remembered by your failures and not your successes. And that's where I don't want our excellent success in this front to be overshadowed by a failure of not, of having high numbers and having to maintain restrictions, because people will be rightly saying that each person that's gone out and been vaccinated will say, I've done my bit, but then there's still restrictions, and I don't want us to move into that territory. So anything that we can do to communicate and reach out as a full executive to all people and those remaining people that are yet to be vaccinated would be very, very welcome. But I suppose, can I edge into the sort of third area that I want to talk about, which is communication? We have in our pack today a lovely 38-page COVID recovery plan. It's got lots of facts and figures. It's got lots of colours, lots of charts. Generally doesn't mean much when it comes down to public level. Is there an effort to try and take that document and turn it into something that's easily presented and then easily digested, that it can be widespread and passed around rather than a chunky document?
I think that's a very fair challenge, and we've been looking at that in the last few days. On a page, what would it look like if we tried to get some graphics down, what we want to do next? So it's a fair challenge, and we're up for that challenge, and we'll be having to think about that, most definitely.
Perfect. And then just finally from myself, you made reference to funding. I think you said there was 83 areas that were there within it, and that that you had mentioned that they're mostly funded and there. But can you just give me a bit more detail about the funding for those 83 highly impactful areas? And just, I mean, are they all funded at this stage? Is there money earmarked for them, or pathways to get the funding, or is there still some that are up in the air?
I'm going to see if Peter or Jane want to come in on that, because they've been doing a lot of research on where we are. It's not a bad position, Chair, overall. But Peter, do you want to? Or Jane?
Yes, Chair, we've been working very closely with departments just to understand the funding position. And at the time the plan was published, there was probably around half the interventions were funded. And we were trying to be ambitious. We wanted a plan which sort of set us an ambition that we needed to reach for, which is why we included unfunded interventions in there, because we knew that in terms of multi-year funding not being settled, and in terms of in-year funding, there was more work to be done to thrash that out. Current position is that all but 9 of the interventions are fully or partially funded. Again, that partial funding links back to the fact that we don't have the multi-year comprehensive spending review settlement yet, but they are funded for the current year. The remaining 9, we're continuing to work with departments just again to bottom out whether there is departmental baseline funding that can be allocated towards those, or what is required. But we've moved on significantly from when the plan was published at the start of August.
Okay. Can I, in a rather annoyingly scrutinising Assembly committee way, ask for those 9? Could you send us up those 9 so that we can track to make sure that those then do become funded, so we can use any pressure that we can to try and ensure that they are to help you deliver that? But I know it always feels bad when you're saying don't send us the 74 that are funded, but send us the 9 that aren't. But it's in an effort to just try and keep that openness and to be helpful to you there.
Absolutely, sure.
Thank you. I'm going to bring in John Stewart, the Vice Chair of the committee, and ask him for his questions. John, over to yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Colin. Thank you, Karen, Peter and Jane, for coming along today. I appreciate the answers and the presentation so far. I don't want to dive into the entire document itself, not just because we probably haven't got the time to analyse it in the detail that we need to, but also because I trust the people like yourselves that have put this together and the research that you've done and the knowledge that you bring to this with the experts outside the department to do it. There's also many of the headline items are stuff that we would all agree on. So I don't think any of us could disagree with the need to develop sustainable economic development or the health of our population, green growth and tackling inequalities, and all the subheadings I haven't got a problem with, to be quite honest. My main concern is what we constantly see with great strategies is that we never actually see them come to fruition because of the change of mandates, the instability of government here, and the fact that somebody else comes along with another wonderful strategy. How can we ensure through the work that you're doing that this one actually comes to fruition? Because much of what's in this goes way beyond the 24 months that's actually the headline item on this, and way beyond the 6 months, Karen, that you referred to. And I'd be really keen to see how we get to see these good strategies actually happen. And with that, how much do you think sustainability of government here matters? Because yes, there's 6 months left of the mandate. We're hearing threats that might not be the case. How then, after this mandate, when the next government comes along, do we keep this here as our blueprint to build back better and recover from COVID-19?
I suppose 4 elements to my answer, if I may. This is a 24-month plan. It's been endorsed by the executive, almost certainly out of necessity, because these are the things that need to happen. These are the things that will continue to need to be focused on. The second element of my answer is it will change inevitably as we engage with sectors such as Children and Young People's Commissioner, Commissioner for Older People. We will start to hear about things that we might be able to imagine now, but we haven't yet seen the impacts fully played out. So we're open to this document changing, because if it's not reflecting and delivering for citizens, then we're not on the right strategy in the first place. This is also going to take us into programme for government, and we've done a piece of work to say, if this is the plan as it is now, given that the draft programme for government outcomes are out there, are we in the right space? And we believe we are. We can match what we're trying to do into where the programme for government may well land. So they're the things that I think are the key elements of it. So we think we're on the right track. We'll keep it fresh and relevant. It should take us into PFG. And if the incoming executive has new thoughts on it, well, it will be our job to work within those. That would just be part of our role to take on board what the new executive wants us to do. Okay. But myself, I think that those 4 issues are going to be relevant for the time being, and we're looking to either deliver or seed actions that will deliver before the end of the mandate, so people can see tangible progress. And I think that also goes to what the Chair was saying about communication as well. We need to be able to say, this is what we've delivered.
Absolutely. No, and I totally agree with you about any good plan being dynamic. I think we don't know what's going to come around the corner in 6 months or a year from now anyway. So when we look at what I would say a medium-term plan like this, you need to be able to take changes on board, and I appreciate that it's factored in that can happen. And I do agree with that need for communication. I think if I was to put this on my social media, share it with the public, they probably wouldn't get past page 1, just because that's the nature of people. They're pretty time sensitive in terms of how much time they have to offer. So if you could have this much more streamlined, and then seeing the outcomes that are coming from them, people might actually give it that credibility whenever they start to see it delivering. You mentioned the 80 key areas of intervention, and I think you talked about 6 months towards the end of the mandate when we try and fund and deliver some of those. And key to that is cross-departmental action, which is front and centre in the summary of this document. One of my bugbears has been what I would believe is an ingrained silo mentality within departments in Northern Ireland. That if we take green growth, for example, it straddles the energy strategy, climate change legislation, education of our young people, infrastructure matters. Yet quite often no one ever seems to put the periscope up. How can you, as a task force and an executive overseeing all this, ensure that we do that better? Because I think that's key to delivering this and everything that we have in government.
I'm more optimistic than you might imagine about that, because of the experience of the last 12 months. Just to illustrate, within the structure that the Chair asked me about, one of the working groups that we have within that structure, cross-departmental working group on restrictions, and every department has come along to that with us for us. It was weekly up until about a month ago, so a year's worth of colleagues coming every week to spend hour and a half with us to make sure we were getting the joins right. And that's the sort of work that goes behind. I mentioned at the outset between the 1st of April and the 10th of September, the executive took decisions on 17 significant packages of easements, and that was presented every time as cross-departmental package. So we can do it, and we can do it in this space as well if we just carry on that momentum. And we've got used to it, and it's good, and we can see that when we work together, we deliver more than when we work on our own. So we're determined, and our colleagues in other departments are determined that recovery will be taken forward on a cross-departmental basis.
Okay. I have no doubt that civil servants, hardworking civil servants like yourselves of all departments are keen to do it. I just think sometimes there's maybe not the political will, or sometimes some people politically spend too much time in the scrum and never get out to have an actual look what's going on. But if you're assuring me it's happening, I'm reassured, and hopefully we'll be able to see the outcomes of that as well. Sorry.
Deputy Chair, if I could jump in again. I think collaboration is key as we move forward, and whenever we were talking to Permanent Secretaries Group about it, we articulated that collaboration can manifest itself in a number of different ways. At a very basic level, it's two departments or two partners coming together to deliver one of the interventions. It's very clear from the recovery plan that you can see how a number of the interventions packaged together to deliver a higher level strategic indicator. But it's also apparent you can actually pick out interventions from across the 4 accelerators, which knit together to deliver a bigger overall impact for specific sectors. Now, that sector might be children and young people, it might be the rural community. There's a number of ways to tackle collaboration to make sure that you're maximising that. And hopefully the oversight board that we put in place that brings together the senior leadership from across the departments will be the vehicle for driving that forward.
I hope so, and thanks for that, Peter. If I could just finish, those 2 words are key to me: collaboration between the departments, the sustainability of the institutions here as well, and the continuity of the message. And I think hopefully that hits home to everyone that's listening to this. I appreciate your time today. I'm conscious of everyone else coming in, so thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that, John. I'm going to invite Pat Sheehan up into the Spotlight now and see if Pat has questions that he'd like to ask. So over to yourself there, Pat.
Thanks, Colin. I don't know whether you can see me or not. There seems to be a bit of a problem with my camera. It was working perfectly well in the Education Committee this morning, but there seems to be a problem now. In any event, I'll go ahead. Just in terms of the actions from this plan, will they address long-term underlying economic issues such as the lack of job security, low incomes, regional imbalances and so on? Thanks.
We are focused primarily on the impacts from COVID, but I don't think we can just say it's just that, because the impacts of COVID will have exacerbated some of those longer term issues, and this is an opportunity to look more widely around some of those. So yes, I would agree with you on that point.
Yes, and I suppose, Karen, COVID has impacted different sections of our community in different ways, and some have been more adversely impacted than others, particularly those from disadvantaged areas. And just listening to the Chief Medical Officer this morning in the Education Committee talking about the numbers of children who missed out on learning as a result of the pandemic. The numbers from kids from disadvantaged backgrounds far outweighed children from more affluent areas. And that, given that they're already at a disadvantage in educational terms, that's going to seriously impact on that. These are the kids who are going to leave school without qualifications, end up in low-paid jobs and so on. So while there is an underlying problem there already, it is going to be exacerbated by this pandemic. And I think it's important that any recovery plan takes account of that. Would you agree?
Totally. That's why one of the 4 is about tackling inequalities. And it's a broad range of issues within that. Some of the things we talk about in the team, if you think most governments will think 2 mandates ahead, 10 years. So we say to ourselves regularly in the team that today's 8-year-olds are 18 at the end of that 2 mandate cycle. So we've got opportunities in that space really to start to think through those issues. That's why we're really keen to work with partners on the outside who just know those issues intimately and will give us their wise counsel as we're developing this. So yeah, we're with you on that.
Okay. Thanks for that. And just one other short question. When can we expect to see a finalised programme for government, especially given that it's so crucial in assisting recovery from COVID? Thanks.
That is still a work in progress in the department, Mr. Sheehan, so I wouldn't be able to give you a precise date on that. But a lot of work has been done this year, public consultation, as you'll be aware. So it's just remaining under consideration in TEO at the moment.
Do you want to give me a rough ballpark figure?
I wouldn't like to, because I think I would be guessing, and there's a lot of work going on to move it on. But I think that's probably all I can say on that issue at the moment.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks, Chair.
Okay,
That's
thank
me.
you very much, Pat. I can't actually see into the committee room, but I know that Trevor is there. Trevor, have you any questions that you'd like to ask?
Yes, Chair, thanks. Thank you, Karen, Peter, for your presentation. I just wonder what, this is the Executive Office initiative, and yet it involves all the other departments. So if I take a health department or the economic development aspect, there's already departments working very hard on those issues. What does the intervention of the Executive Office and this plan bring to the party in terms of are people having access to health and social care in line with targets? I mean, what do you expect of this?
That's a really fair challenge, and we should acknowledge that there's a huge amount of work going on across all of the departments that will be involved in delivering this plan. But we genuinely believe that bringing it together in the centre and coordinating it, and only getting involved in the things we really need to, where a massive amount of coordination is needed, will add some value and make us more impactful. And also, we think from a citizen's perspective, I'm not sure citizens divide up what life feels like into departmental buckets in just the way we organise ourselves, and to try and put it in together into a plan that delivers for citizens on all aspects or as many aspects of life as we can, it is important as well from a citizen's angle.
Yeah, well, you use the words added value, and I suppose that's what it comes down to. You think that this plan, the Executive Office can add something, but if you tell me about health in particular. The health department's working day and night to try and do something about the problems, and particularly the waiting lists. What can the Executive Office do to accelerate that? Are you talking about more money or more expertise? I mean, what is it?
It's the coordination and the making the linkages with other issues where if we do something in one space, it could be positively beneficial for health or the other way around. So it's looking for those strategic links and just trying to bring it all together into one space. What we're not about is getting in the way of health delivering, and we're certainly not in the way about thinking that we know more than they do. They're the experts, and you're absolutely right. They're working day and night on this. They have been from the start of COVID. So whatever we do at the centre will be done with departments' needs in mind as well, and that we're not going to be adding layers of bureaucracy that we don't need and departments cannot afford to service for us.
No, well, that would never do. Thanks very much for that, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those, Trevor. If I could ask now for Diane to be brought up into the spotlight, and then we can progress with her questions. So Diane, we'll pass over to yourself.
Thank you. Yes, and Karen, thank you for the presentation. Good to see you again. And thank you also for all of the work that you and your team have been doing. I think that those of us who saw the hassles of the past 18 months will understand just how much that work was and how valuable it was. So a sincere thank you. So I want to just run back to the funding issue. So this is a COVID recovery plan. And you're saying to me how much, or maybe I didn't pick this up right, how much of this plan is funded already as we speak?
Peter, do you want to come in?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, in working with the departments, we've now got to the position where all of the interventions, bar 9, are either fully funded or partially funded for the current year, pending a longer term settlement. And that's some of that money will have come from departmental baselines. Some of that will have come from additional funding that was made available in relation to COVID specifically. But that's the position that we've got to working with the departments.
Thank you. So when I read the COVID recovery plan, I see some actions that are quite short term, but I see other actions that are medium and longer term, as every plan should have. That's fine. And so you're saying to me that what is funded now is funded for this year. Am I right about that?
Yes.
And
Yes.
has no further funding beyond this year?
That's the situation we're in on our finances, Mrs. Dodd. So we've got settlement for this year. It's a single year budget. We prefer a 3-year budget, as you know. That's not the situation we're in. But some of the actions will be impactful in this current year, and some will sow the seeds of future developments. So I would see this year's funding as being first step on the delivery of this plan. It's a 24-month plan, and we would be hopeful that we'll be given a fair hearing on future funding allocations, given the importance of this plan. But we're in the same position as everyone else on that.
So is the executive position that this plan and the actions in this will take priority when it comes to funding requirements and after the spending review, and hopefully I agree that we need budgets that will see us through to 3-year plans?
Well, the executive has given us this plan for the next 24 months. It'd be difficult for me, I think, to speculate on spending allocations beyond the end of this period, but given the importance of it, and I think the reason we've got the plan is because it's being driven by necessity. You'll know yourself, Mrs. Dodds, just how much work was done in the Department of Economy to settle on the interventions that were being delivered there and are reflected in this plan. They will make a difference. The health interventions are, again, of necessity. Tackling inequalities of necessity, and green growth is just such an amazing opportunity.
So just so that we're absolutely clear, because I do think that this is the crucial bit of this plan, and obviously I've seen a lot of the economy bits of the plan, but some of it, I'm going to quote something that's not economy. So infrastructure, contribute to net zero, provide sustainable and inclusive transport, support connectivity, health and well-being by transforming travel, and our towns and cities by encouraging citizens to increase the proportion of journeys undertaken by foot, etc., etc. That is a mighty ambitious programme for a 1-year budget and a 2-year plan. So all I'm saying is I just wanted to know, is there a connection between this plan and where the executive might land when the spending review and the 3-year budget system is in place? And I'm presuming from your answers, Karen, that there isn't. Is there?
I just think it'd be inappropriate for me to speculate on the funding allocations that are for the executive to decide. All I can say is we've been making the case for the delivery of this plan. The example you picked out there is a really good one because it's the sort of thing that has to start now. It will have some impact this year, some tangible impact this year that we can point to, but it is long term and it will end up being aligned with programme for government. So that's a very long term piece of work that probably takes you beyond a 3-year budget, I would have thought.
Well beyond that. It's a lifetime of work but I'm just saying it's interesting to know how the plan correlates to the funding that is available now and the funding that may become available, and whether the plan is relevant to the Finance Minister's planning of the budget as we go forward is really my point. That I think is most people looking at a plan will want to know, and I think that's the important issue for me.
Fair challenge.
Thank you.
Okay, Diane, maybe if I could just keep Diane in the spotlight just to make sure that I'm not misquoting or disagreeing with what you're saying, because I think the point you've made is so valid that, I think something that we might want to see as a committee, Karen, would be the finance that is set aside this plan. And it's actually not from the financial perspective of how much and where's that money actually coming from. But I think that from our perspective, seeing the amount of money that is set aside each one of those 83 areas will actually dictate to us just how serious a department is about implementing that strategy. Because if you've got a very grand piece of work that you want to do and there's $5,000 set against it for the next 6 months, well, you'll know that you're not going to get very much out of $5,000. But if there's 2 million set aside, you might go, well, actually we could see how that there is quite serious. But maybe if we could get something down, would that be useful from at the 80 minutes and how much?
I mean, I agree with you. I mean, obviously, in the Department for the Economy, I know that 300 million was allocated of COVID funding for economic recovery. I also know that the vast majority of that is reflected in the plan and is actually allocated and gone. But I mean, if you think of, for example, skills, I mean, and skills here is recognised absolutely validly as one of the ways that we need to grow the economy. But we're not going to make the progress that we need to by next end of March, the financial year deadline. And I'm really trying to tease out that whether there'll be a correlation between the need to fund skills and the plan and what the finance minister will do and the decision the executive will take.
Okay, Karen, are you getting a sense there of what we would be looking for, maybe in a short document that would have the areas, how long it's envisaged that each one of the areas would be delivered, and then how much money is set aside at this stage, and then maybe even how much would be needed going forward, because that will allow us to sort of know that the departments are serious about the delivery of the elements. But would that be okay?
Yes, we'll take that away, Chair. Mrs. Dodds will definitely have a look at that. I would just say we're in the same situation as every programme at the moment, given that we have a one-year settlement. But I take the point, and we will get some information to the committee.
Okay.
I'm genuinely, Karen, not trying in any way to be awkward. I just think that if we have a serious plan for recovery, then we need to know, and if this is the plan that the executive have decided on, and it's fair enough, I've seen a lot of it over the last number of months, how is that reflected in spending allocations going forward?
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Dan. That was very good. That was useful there. I think then we maybe just to check in with George Robinson, if George has any questions that you'd like to ask. George, are you okay there? Would you like to ask questions?
Yes, I would, Chair.
Okay, over to yourself.
Thank you. And can I thank Karen and her team for the presentation? And my point was, I'm not trying to be negative, but I'm looking further down the line if there would be maybe another lockdown, which there's nobody in this world wants, but at the same time, we possibly have to prepare for it from a financial point of view. We're talking about furlough and grants and everything else that went along with it. Is there a contingency plan that the department would have in case that we're back to square one again, lockdown wise?
Well, I suppose the first thing I would say, Mr. Robinson, if we go back to the importance of the vaccines that the Chair mentioned at the outset, that's
Yes.
absolutely crucial to how we can get through, and that's why we're very supportive of the effort to get every single additional person in for their jab.
Exactly.
Not to overstate the importance of it. So we're grateful the committee's talking about this today, because it's how we'll get through. I wouldn't like to make a prediction. That what I can say is that at a political executive level, I think ministers will do anything they can to avoid a lockdown.
Exactly.
Nobody wants it. Absolutely nobody wants it. And we were talking there, I think Mr. Sheen was talking earlier about the CMO being at the Education Committee, the impact on children and education. We just will do anything we can. And that's why the executive is being so cautious and so careful in the approach it's taking to the lifting of restrictions. And we do have higher case numbers here, they're stubborn, and we have hospitalisations. We haven't seen the impact of the universities going back yet. So there's a big question for us is how do we keep citizens with us doing some of the basics, like the hand washing and all of those things. Outdoors is better than indoors. So the messaging there is really important as well. So we're looking forward to our autumn-winter messaging campaign as well. So that's not a precise answer, Mr. Robinson, but it's a complex set of issues, but no one would want a lockdown if we could avoid it.
I know you haven't got a crystal ball, but just for contingency plan, just in case, that we would have to go back to sort of near enough square one again, which, as I said earlier, nobody wants.
Well, you could imagine that we're having some thoughts, but I wouldn't like to put it higher than that because we're not planning for lockdown. Nobody's going to want us to do that, but continuing to push around vaccines, following the public health advice is so important. And it's great that the TEO committee is raising health issues because they are having societal impacts, and anything we can do to get the message out is much appreciated.
I think, Mr. Robinson, a recent meeting of SAGE flagged up how the introduction of reasonably small controls at an early stage can have a big impact that can maybe avoid those more substantial interventions that you mentioned. I think that we also need to recognise that we still retain some restrictions in Northern Ireland, which other neighbouring jurisdictions have removed. So again, some of the things that we already have are in England's Plan B. But as we take forward the autumn-winter planning, we'll sort of collate all those different factors together and develop a plan for moving through the more challenging months.
Yes, I just want to make it clear that I'm not trying to be negative, but just in case. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, George, and certainly not being negative. I think it's a reality that's out there. And, Karen, I think you used the term that our daily figures are remaining stubbornly high. I'll go that one step forward and say that it's the stubborn people that are refusing to get vaccinated that are actually causing the high rates, because the evidence is there that lots of people that aren't vaccinated are catching COVID, are spreading COVID, and are ending up in hospital. And there's an increasing number of people that are in hospital very close to serious illnesses, and then at that point are saying, I just have been vaccinated. Well, what a silly stage to decide that it was the wrong time to get vaccinated. You get it done now whenever we prevent ourselves from getting increasing numbers in hospital, which will cause an inevitable lockdown to follow if we continue to have high rates of hospitalisations. But hopefully we can keep, with good messaging from yourselves across the whole team, we can get the message out there that the vaccinations are safe and that they prevent people from getting seriously ill in hospital, and that allows us all to progress. So thank you very much for your attendance with us today. It's been very, very useful. It's been a good update for us. It's given us lots of information, and we wish you well with the delivery of this. And if we could get those couple of information, we may come back to you again in a period of time to just see how things are going with that. But thank you to all of you for coming here today.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry. Apologies. Emma was in the. That's my problem for not being in the room and not seeing Emma there. We have one more member that's still there, maybe to ask a question. Emma, over to yourself with my sincerest apologies.
You're fine, Chair. Thank you, and thank you for the presentation thus far. I don't want to keep you guys on any longer than is necessary, but I just wanted to address, I suppose, following on from some of the earlier points, around the equality issue and the inequalities that are highlighted in the document, and I recognise that it acknowledges the fact that women have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, and also that people from lower income families and from areas with higher rates of deprivation have been negatively impacted by COVID at a greater rate. But I'm concerned that there isn't much of a focus on the fact that people from ethnic minorities, migrant workers, asylum seekers have been negatively impacted by COVID, obviously coming in the wake of Brexit, which sort of two factors coming in at the one time. And we know that the pressures that are currently on our migrant worker population and people that had to complete some documentation, and we know that many of them have left the north in the wake of Brexit, and that's having an impact on our industries across the north of Ireland. So I wanted to know if there was any actions being taken to address those particular inequalities. I noticed as well that there's reference made to improvements that are needed in the health and social care sector. And obviously, again, if we're talking about women being negatively impacted by COVID-19, that the majority of the people working in our care and economies are women, and the majority of people that are impacted by a lack of care in the home are women, because it tends to be women that take on these unpaid care roles. And as a byproduct of that, then we have people that are in hospital at the minute who don't need to be, who can't be in their homes because of a lack of domiciliary care packages. That's putting extra pressure on our hospitals, which are obviously already at breaking point because of the number of people in ICUs and suffering from COVID-19. So it's almost like a perfect storm at the minute, and we can see that years and years of underinvestment in health and social care, a lack of respect to those particular people that are employed in those industries, and a lack of motivation for anyone to join that workforce has all combined to mean that we now have workforce shortages. And I know in my own area a fortnight ago we lost 39 care packages in one village, literally on over the course of one evening, and that sent 39 families into a complete headspin because they didn't know who was going to be coming in to look after their loved one over that weekend. So I just wanted to know if there was anything specifically in terms of targeting that. Obviously that will lead to more women in full-time employment and addresses the gender pay gap and the gender pay imbalance that exists there. So if you could touch on that, thank you.
Thank you. So on your first point about inequalities and newcomer families, ethnic minorities, migrant populations, on our list of organisations to reach out to this week so we can hear more about exactly that sort of issue, we've got the Equality Commission on our list, and this is just the start of stakeholder engagement, so it's definitely something we will look out for. We're very mindful of it. Peter, Jane, is there anything specific we can say on the health and social care side, or do we need to revert to DOH on that one?
I think we probably need to revert to DOH and come back with some additional detail. You know, obviously that whole area is subject to announcements that were made recently by UKG in relation to the additional funding that was being made available and what that might lead to. But we can take that away and come back with something more thought through for the member.
Okay, you have enough, Emma, for that?
That's okay, thank you.
Okay, that's good. Okay, look, thank you members for the questions. I'll not rehearse my end of meeting speech again, but it's all there. Thank you very much indeed for your attendance, and we'll come back to you in the future, no doubt, to do a bit of a check-in. But thank you for coming today.
Thanks very much.
So we will just swap around from our presenters to our members back up into the spotlight then, and is there anything that anybody would like to raise on the back of that, or are we happy enough with the outcomes from that presentation? Yes.
Chair,
Yes.
just to follow up on the finance issue, that you will maybe drop Karen a note to indicate what the kind of thing that we'd like. I think it's just an interesting thing to do and will help form our judgments when we see the multi-year budget.
Michael, are you happy enough to do that?
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
Chair, could I just come in there?
Yes, of course,
Just
Pat.
on the issue you were raising yourself around the vaccination programme, and while it has been successful here to a certain extent, it seems to have been less successful in encouraging younger people to take up the vaccine. When you compare it to how things are going in the south, they have had a very high uptake. Apparently, theirs is the highest in the EU. And I'm just wondering if there has been any communication, north and south, where we could learn from what they have done. Probably should have asked that while the officials were here, but it's only just come to me,
Okay.
Okay.
Would you be happy if we maybe asked that as in a written like a written letter to them to ask for an update from that perspective about the shared learning that there is from other places in terms of how they're managing to be much more successful in that front than we are here?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you.
Michael, are you happy enough with that?
Yep, good with that, Chair.
Okay, excellent. Okay, members, then maybe I'll just deal with the next item on the agenda. I've just been informed that second presentation I need to go to downstairs has begun, so I'll do the next item and then warn John that he can pick up maybe from item 6 onwards for me, please. But item 6 there is a written briefing that has been provided by the Assembly Research Team on the UK approach to the protocol. It's page 62 of the meeting pack. We had commissioned this research on the command paper and their intended approaches from the Assembly Research, and it's intended as an initial reference document to inform us at our next meeting whenever we have folk in for scrutiny. So is there anything in the document that anybody wants to have explored further? I mean, it is a factual document. It's not something for us to debate the pros and cons of what's in it. It's a factual document that we would use the information for when we next have ministers and officials in. Any questions on the content of it, Diane?
Yes, just very quickly, I, to my shame, haven't read the full content of it, but what I'm interested in terms of research, is the impact on Northern Ireland of some of the legislation that is currently going through the House of Commons. So, for example, today MPs are debating the subsidy control bill. Now, that's not an exciting topic for most people, but for a nerd like me, it is, because that is setting up the new state aid regime for the United Kingdom. But of course, Northern Ireland will be in the EU's state aid regime for goods. And so is there any research on the impact of the bill vis-a-vis Northern Ireland's position? And secondly, how Northern Ireland, how the regulator can actually enforce fair competition, the Competition and Markets Authority, the regulator there, how they can enforce fair competition across the United Kingdom?
Okay, well, first of all, Dan, let me completely discount any reference to the nerd. That would be a terrible suggestion, so we'll not have any more of that. In terms of the content, Michael, what would be your reading in terms of the crossover from the research that's been conducted for us in terms of legislation that's currently passing through in other places?
Yeah, I think this is specifically about the command paper and the content of it, what it means, and what the EU has maybe responded to on the issues in the command paper. Members would be perfectly free to ask for research to provide for specific areas of research as it stands, and something like the impact of legislation going through the House of Commons, specific bits of legislation might be a good focused piece of research to ask the Research Service to do.
Okay, are you asking or suggesting, Michael, that we would ask for that as a committee, or is that something that a member could ask for individually?
I think either, depending on the actual questions, because these are cross-cutting issues, we might need to think about whether our committee is the best committee to ask for that specific piece of research. But if you want to leave it with me, I can take it away and speak to the Research Service and the appropriate clerks, if other committees are involved.
Okay. Well, look, this is very much meant as it's not a document that's presented today and that's its end journey. It's a document that we could ask for further information to, and as we go for various presentations in the term ahead, we could be asking for updates. So maybe, Michael, if you come back to us next week on that, on how to approach that issue that Diane has raised, that would be very useful. I'm going to just say Pat's normally good at putting his hand up there if he needs to come in. Is there anybody in the room there, Emma or Trevor, that would need to come in?
No, thanks.
Oh, okay, we're all happy enough with that then. We can note that paper, but note that it can be expanded upon and developed if required then. Okay, folks, John, I'll pass over to you to pick up from item 7 onwards then. Thank you for that. And yeah, over to yourself.
Thanks, Colin. Enjoy the rest of your conference as well. Best of luck with your feedback session. Hope it goes well. No bother. Members, just moving on then. Item 7 is the written briefing on the scrutiny of arm's length bodies, the Strategic Investment Board. And you'll see from pages 106 to 134 in the meeting pack. The committee agreed at its planning day to invite written briefs from arm's length bodies in lieu of oral briefings. Just asking members if there are any aspects of the report they want to go into today, or are you happy to note it for now? And Michael, I'm relying on you, hopefully in the room, if anyone's got their hand, because I can't see the room. Tell me what's going on.
No, Chair.
Yep, thank you. Members, you're content with the written briefing. Moving on then to the forward work programme. The First and Deputy First Minister are able to attend on the 6th of October and have offered the 13th of October. I'm just checking, Michael, were they unable to attend the 6th? Is that?
That's correct. They can't make the 6th, so they've offered us the 13th of October instead.
No problem. And just let members know that oral briefing from the Commission for Victims and Survivors has been brought forward to the 6th of October as well. The department will be able to brief the committee on the 13th of October on the October monitoring. Just to ask members if they want an oral briefing or are they happy with the written briefing? Any thoughts on that? Yes, George?
Yeah. Just from my own point of view, this will be my last meeting at the committee. I'm changed over, so after today, I won't be back on the committee again.
Oh, we're sorry to hear that, George. Sorry to losing you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy.
Well, but thank you for everything you've done for the committee. And who's replacing you? Any ideas?
To the best of my knowledge, it's Alec Easton, possibly.
Okay. No problem. We'll look forward to seeing Alex in the committee. But thanks for letting us know, George, and best of luck with your move on.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't get a flavour, anyway, members, on the request. I'm assuming if there's no one asking for a face-to-face or oral briefing, I'll be happy for it just to come as a written submission on that
I think
monitoring.
an oral briefing on this would be good, personally.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. And I think given the magnitude of it, Diane,
Yes.
that would be worthwhile.
The fact that it should now be a 3-year budget plan,
Absolutely.
it will require significant scrutiny.
Okay. Well, in the absence of anyone offering an alternative view, are we content with that, members?
Yeah.
Okay. Just to make you aware as well, arrangements are being made for the attendance of the Senate Special Select Committee on the 20th of October. And just to check with members, if you're content, the clerk asks the Finance Committee to swap the Senate chamber for room 30 on that date to accommodate as many members as possible. I'm assuming there won't be any objections to that. And could you, just as usual, let the committee staff know if you intend to attend the meeting in person or remotely? That would be helpful just so they can plan. In terms of the rest of the forward work programme, is everybody happy with what's in there? Happy to note? Yep. Okay, moving on to item 9 then is correspondence. There's quite a bit of correspondence, 17 items in the meeting pack, and I think there's 5 or 6, Michael, am I right in saying, in the table papers as well?
Yes, that's right, Chair.
I don't propose, unless someone really wants me to go through them individually, because we might be there a while. I'm assuming everyone's had a look at them. Is there anything from the members that you want to dive into or get more information on or quiz? Not seeing anyone gesticulating or indicating otherwise. Are we happy to note then all of the correspondence en masse? Yep. Okay. That takes us to item 10 then. Any other business? I have none. Michael, do you have anything?
I don't, Chair, no.
No, the chair hasn't indicated anything to me. Anything from the floor, folks?
No, thank you.
Nope. Okay. And the item 11 then is a date and time of next meeting, which is our usual Wednesday meeting, next Wednesday, 29th at 2 p.m. That's all from me. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you all next week. George, best of luck with your move on.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Michael, could you do the red button for me?